The massive ring station hung in space like a metal crown around a dying star. It was bigger than most moons, built by 12 alien races over thousands of years. Inside its gleaming halls, the Galactic Council was meeting for the first time in 50 years. Something had scared them enough to break their long silence. Speaker Zeth Kalar stood at the center of the great chamber. His crystal body caught the light from a dozen suns, throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. Around him sat the representatives of the most powerful species in the galaxy, the bird-like Ethon with their golden feathers, the slug-like Morthan, who lived for thousands of years, the energy beings called Vex, who barely had physical form at all. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They decided which species could expand and which had to stay on their homeworlds. They controlled trade routes and settled wars. Most importantly, they kept the peace by making sure no single race got too powerful. But now they had a problem. A big one. "The humans," Zeth Kalar said, his voice ringing like broken glass. "In 50 standard years, they have spread to over 200 worlds. This is unacceptable." The chamber filled with angry sounds, clicking, hissing, and electronic, buzzes from a dozen different throats. The Galactic Council had watched human expansion with growing worry. Other species took centuries to spread to even 10 worlds. Humans did it in decades. "They ignore our authority," continued the crystal being. "They make alliances without our permission. They terraform worlds that should remain empty. They breed too fast and move too quickly." Admiral Kesatra of the Ethon spread her golden wings wide. "My scouts report human colonies in the Outer Rim. That sector was marked as off-limits 3,000 years ago. They trade with the Kepler species without paying council taxes," added Counselor Grex, his slug-like body pulsing with anger. "The Keplers were our vassals. Now they act like equals with these humans." The energy being called Prime Vex flickered with red light. "Most disturbing is their military. They do not fight with honor. They use tricks and deception. They study our tactics and find ways to beat them." Zeth Kalar raised one crystal arm for silence. "The time has come for action. We have tried ignoring them. We have tried diplomatic pressure. Nothing works. They continue to spread like a disease across our galaxy." The speaker moved to the center of the chamber, where a massive hologram showed the spiral arm of the galaxy. Blue dots marked human worlds. There were so many that they looked like stars in the night sky. 50 years ago, they had one world, Zeth Kalar said. Today, they have hundreds. If we do nothing, in another 50 years, they will have thousands. They will challenge our authority. They will upset the balance we have maintained for millennia. "What do you propose?" asked Admiral Kesatra. The crystal being's form brightened. "An ultimatum. We give them 30 standard days to stop all expansion. They must submit to council oversight. They must pay reparations for the disruption they have caused. They must reduce their fleet size to acceptable levels. And if they refuse," this came from Counselor Grex, "then we remind them why the galaxy has been peaceful for so long. We show them what happens to species who challenge the Council's authority." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some members thought the proposal was too harsh. Others said it was not harsh enough. But in the end, they voted. The decision was unanimous. The humans would be given their final warning. The quantum burst transmission took 3 days to reach Earth. It traveled faster than light itself, jumping through hyperspace from relay to relay until it reached the human home system. Luna Station, orbiting Earth's moon, received the message first. Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing fleet reports when her communications officer brought her the transmission. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had been fighting pirates and raiders for 20 years. She had seen enough war to know when someone was trying to start one. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from an unknown source," Lieutenant Torres said. "It's using outdated protocols, but the encoding is incredibly advanced." "Put it on screen." The hologram that appeared showed Speaker Zeth Kalar in all his crystal glory. The alien's image was perfect, every detail sharp and clear. When he spoke, the translation came through in perfect Earth standard to the species that calls itself humanity. "You have expanded beyond acceptable limits. You have disrupted the galactic order that has maintained peace for 10,000 years. You have ignored the authority of the Galactic Council." Chen raised an eyebrow. She had heard rumors of some kind of galactic government, but Earth had never made official contact. Apparently, they had been watching humanity for a while. Therefore, the Council issues this final warning. You have 30 standard days to comply with our demands. First, you will cease all expansion beyond your current borders. Second, you will submit all military and colonial operations to Council oversight. Third, you will pay reparations of 1 million standard credits for each unauthorized world you have settled. The Admiral felt her jaw tighten. These aliens thought they could just order humanity around like children. Fourth, you will reduce your military fleet to no more than 50 vessels. Fifth, you will surrender all terraforming equipment to Council authority. These terms are not negotiable. Chen looked around the briefing room. Her staff was staring at the hologram with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Colonel Martinez, her ground forces commander, was actually laughing. If you fail to comply within 30 days, the Council will take corrective measures. This is your only warning. The galaxy has room for your species, but only if you learn your place in it. The transmission ended. The briefing room was quiet for a long moment. Sir, Lieutenant Torres said carefully, should I draft a response? Admiral Chen was quiet for another moment. She thought about the colonies on the rim worlds, families building new lives under alien suns, miners on asteroid stations sending rare metals back to Earth, scientists studying strange new forms of life on distant planets. Then she thought about these crystal aliens who thought they could order humanity to stop growing, stop exploring, stop being human. No response needed, Lieutenant, she said finally. File this under threats received and mark it for the Intelligence Division. They'll want to analyze it. What about the demands, sir? Chen stood up and walked to the window that looked out at Earth. The blue and white planet turned slowly below them. Somewhere down there, children were being born who would grow up to see stars that hadn't even been named yet. What demands? She asked. I didn't hear any demands. Did anyone else hear demands? Her staff exchanged glances. Colonel Martinez was the first to speak. No, sir. No demands at all. Good. Then we continue. With Operation Starbound as planned. Those new colonies on the Centauri frontier won't build themselves. She turned back to face her officers. And send a message to Admiral Park at Deep Space Command. Tell him to accelerate the new ship construction program. Something tells me we're going to need those ships sooner than expected. As her staff filed out to carry out their orders, Chen remained at the window. 30 days, the alien had said. She wondered if these Galactic Council members had any idea what humans could accomplish in 30 days when they really put their minds to it. She had a feeling they were about to find out. 3 days after the ultimatum, Speaker Zethkalar stood in the Council's vast archives, the crystal being moved between towering data columns that stored the history of every known species in the galaxy. He was looking for answers to a question that troubled him. Why were the humans so different? The first file he accessed was from 80 years ago. It showed a small blue planet with primitive technology. The humans had just learned to split the atom. They were fighting wars with chemical weapons and metal flying machines. The report marked them as a species with moderate potential for advancement. The Council had seen thousands of species like this. Most took centuries to develop spaceflight. Many destroyed themselves first. The few that survived usually became peaceful traders or stayed close to their home systems. But humans had done something else entirely. Zethkalar pulled up the next report, dated 50 years later. The humans had not only survived their violent phase, they had used it to learn. They developed space travel not through peaceful exploration, but by turning their weapons into rockets. They reached their moon not for science, but to prove they could beat their enemies there. Fascinating, the speaker whispered to himself. The reports that followed painted a picture that should have been impossible. Within 30 years of leaving their home planet, humans had established colonies on 12 worlds. Within 40 years, they were terraforming dead planets into gardens. Within 50 years, they had spread across an entire sector. But it was not just their speed that worried. The Council. It was how they did it. Zethkalar accessed the file on Kepler Prime. The planet had been a council protectorate for 2,000 years. The native Keplers were a peaceful species of six-legged herbivores. They mined rare crystals and paid tribute to the council in exchange for protection. Then the humans arrived. The first contact report was written by Admiral Kessetra herself. She had been sent to investigate unauthorized signals from the Kepler system. What she found violated every rule of galactic civilization. The humans had not conquered the Keplers. They had not enslaved them or driven them away. Instead, they had offered them a partnership. The humans would provide advanced technology and protection. In return, the Keplers would share their mining expertise and cultural knowledge. The result was the Kepler Mining Consortium, a joint human-alien corporation that mined asteroids with efficiency the Council had never seen. They shared profits equally. They shared technology freely. The Keplers stopped paying tribute to the Council and started building their own starships. This cannot be allowed to continue, Zethkalar had told the Council at the time. But before they could act, the humans had made contact with two more species. The speaker accessed the file on the Jung incident. The Jung were a warrior race that had been contained on their home system for 500 years. They were too aggressive to be allowed to expand, but too dangerous to destroy. The Council's solution was simple: blockade their system and wait for them to die out. The humans had different ideas. When a human exploration ship made contact with the Jung, the warriors immediately attacked. Standard Council protocol would have been to destroy the attackers and reinforce the blockade. Instead, the humans did something unprecedented. They fought back. The battle lasted 3 days. The human ship was outnumbered 10-1, but it used tactics the Jung had never seen. Instead of meeting them head-on, the humans used hit-and-run attacks. They targeted engines instead of weapons. They used the system's asteroid field for cover. When the battle was over, the human ship was damaged, but alive. Half the Jung fleet was disabled. But instead of fleeing or calling for reinforcements, the human captain did something that shocked everyone. He asked for a meeting. The Jung, impressed by the humans' fighting spirit, agreed. What happened next violated every council law about contact with restricted species. The humans offered the Jung a deal. They would provide new technology and help them explore the galaxy. In return, the Jung would agree to follow certain rules about warfare and civilian protection. The Jung warrior clans were now humanity's most loyal allies. Zethkalar moved to the military analysis section. These files made his crystal form flicker with unease. Human military doctrine was unlike anything the Council had encountered. Most galactic warfare followed ancient traditions. Fleets met in open space and fought until one side surrendered or was destroyed. Planets were either captured intact or destroyed completely. Wars were formal affairs with clear rules and honor codes. Humans ignored all of this. In the border war with the hegemony pirates, human forces had used every dirty trick imaginable. They disguised warships as cargo vessels. They used electronic warfare to blind enemy sensors. They even convinced several pirate crews to switch sides by offering them better pay and benefits. The war that should have lasted years was over in months. The pirates surrendered not because they were beaten, but because the humans had made joining them more attractive than fighting them. But the most disturbing report was the most recent one. It came from Council intelligence and was marked with the highest security classification. The humans were preparing for war, not the small conflicts they had fought with pirates and raiders. They were preparing for a war with the Council itself. The evidence was scattered across a dozen star systems, but the pattern was clear. Human colonies had been building underground bunkers and shield generators. Human mining operations had been stockpiling rare metals needed for advanced weapons. Human exploration ships had been mapping hyperspace routes through Council space. Most telling of all, human diplomatic missions to non-Council species had increased by 300% in the last 2 years. They were building alliances. Zethkalar accessed one final file. It was a psychological profile of humanity prepared by the Council's best analysts. The conclusion was simple and terrifying. Humans did not think like other species. They did not seek to find their place in the existing order. They sought to create a new order with themselves at the center. They were not content to be subjects or even allies. They wanted to be equals. More than that, they believed they deserved to be equals, the crystal being returned to the main chamber where the other council members were waiting. They looked at him expectantly, hoping he had found some weakness in the human species that could be exploited. "What did you learn?" asked Admiral Kessetra. Zethkalar's form flickered with deep unease. "I learned that we may have waited too long. The humans are not like the other species we have encountered. They do not accept authority simply because it exists. They challenge it." "All species challenge authority at first," said Counselor Grex. "They learn better when faced with superior force." "Do they?" Zethkalar asked. "Look at their history. They have never had a single world government. They have never had lasting peace. They have been fighting each other for their entire existence. And yet when faced with external threats, they unite instantly." Prime Vex pulsed with red light. "You think they will not surrender?" The speaker was quiet for a long moment. Around him, the greatest powers in the galaxy waited for his answer. Species that had ruled for millennia. Beings that had never known defeat. "I think," Zethkalar said finally, "that we are about to find out what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object." The chamber fell silent. In the distance, the great engines of the ring station hummed with power. But for the first time in 10,000 years, the sound seemed less like strength and more like the ticking of a clock. Time was running out for everyone. 31 days had passed since the ultimatum. The Galactic Council had received no response from humanity. No surrender, no negotiation, no acknowledgement at all. It was as if the most powerful government in the galaxy had simply been ignored. Admiral Vosatek stood on the bridge of the Council dreadnought Eternal Judgment. Around him, 300 ships from 12 different species formed the largest military force assembled in 500 years. The fleet stretched across space like a metal constellation, each vessel bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The target was New Bzantium, humanity's furthest colony. It sat on the edge of the spiral arm, 70 light-years from the nearest council world. The humans had chosen to build their city on a planet with toxic air and crushing gravity. Only their stubborn nature could explain why anyone would want to live there. But that was exactly why the council had chosen it. New Bzantium represented everything they hated about human expansion. It was too far from Earth. It was in space. That should have remained empty. And its very existence was a challenge to council authority. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we have arrived at the target system." Vosatek nodded. He was a veteran of a dozen campaigns against rebel species. The formula was always the same. Arrive with overwhelming force, demonstrate superior firepower, demand surrender. Most species gave up after seeing the council fleet. Those that did not were quickly crushed. "Open a channel to the colony." The main screen showed New Bzantium hanging in space like a gray marble. The planet's surface was hidden under thick clouds, but scanners showed a thriving city of 2 million humans. They had turned a dead world into a garden in just 20 years. "This is Admiral Vosatek of the Galactic Council Defense Force," he broadcast. "The colony of New Bzantium is in violation of galactic law. You have 30 minutes to begin evacuation procedures. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force." The response came back immediately. The image on screen showed a middle-aged human woman in a simple blue uniform. Behind her, Vosatek could see what looked like a government building. Everything was clean and orderly. These humans had built a real civilization here. "Admiral, this is Governor Sarah Martinez of New Bzantium Colony. We have no intention of evacuating our homes. This planet was legally settled under the Terran Colonial Charter. We recognize no authority higher than the Terran Federation." Vosatek felt his jaw muscles tighten. This was not how these conversations usually went. Most species at least tried to negotiate. This human was simply dismissing him. "Governor Martinez, you do not seem to understand your situation. This fleet represents the combined military might of 12 species. We have the power to destroy your entire world. Surely you do not wish to see your people die for the sake of pride." The human woman's expression did not change. "Admiral, you do not seem to understand our situation. We are not afraid of you. We have been expecting you." Before Vosatek could respond, alarm signals began sounding across his bridge. His tactical officer was staring at his instruments in confusion. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from across the system." The humans appear to be activating some kind of network. Network? What kind of network? Unknown, sir. But it's big. Really big. Governor Martinez smiled for the first time. Admiral, let me explain something about humans. When we settle a world, we don't just build cities, we build fortresses. Bzantium has been preparing for this day since the moment we received your ultimatum. The tactical display lit up with red warning signals. All across the system, hidden installations were powering up. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining stations. Missile batteries hidden in asteroid fields. Shipyards that had been built deep underground. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the signals coming from outside the system. Sir, the communications officer said in a shaky voice. We're receiving transmission from human vessels. Multiple human vessels. They appear to be everywhere. What do you mean everywhere? I mean they're in 12 different council systems right now, sir. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. They're telling every world in council space that the fleet is here attacking New Bzantium. Vostek felt something cold settle in his stomach. Show me. The main screen split into multiple images. Each one showed a different council world. And in orbit around each world, small groups of human ships were broadcasting the same message. Attention, citizens of the galaxy. At this moment, the Galactic Council is conducting an unprovoked attack on the peaceful colony of New Bzantium. This attack violates every principle of galactic law and civilization. The time has come to choose sides. This is impossible, Vostek whispered. How did they get ships to all those systems without us detecting them? Governor Martinez was still smiling. Admiral, humans have been exploring the galaxy for 50 years. Did you really think we only built colonies on the worlds you knew about? The tactical officer looked up from his station. Sir, I'm reading over 200 human vessels in this system alone. They're coming out of hyperspace from every direction. 200 ships? That's impossible. Our intelligence report said humans only had 50 vessels total. Your intelligence was wrong, Martinez said simply. We told you what you wanted to hear. While you were watching our official fleet, we were building a real one. Vostek realized with growing horror that he had walked into a trap. The Council had come here to make an example of humanity. Instead, humanity was about to make an example of them. All ships, attack formation, he ordered. Begin bombardment of the planet. Sir, his weapons officer called out. The humans are jamming our targeting systems. I can't get a lock on any surface targets. Then fire blind. Show them the price of defying the Council. The first wave of Council ships opened fire. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward New Bzantium's surface. But instead of hitting cities and farms, they struck the planet's orbital defense grid. Shield generators that the humans had built inside the planet's crust activated all at once. The bombardment that should have destroyed the colony barely scratched the surface. Impossible, Vostek breathed. No species has ever built planetary shields that strong. No species has ever needed to, Martinez replied. Admiral, you're fighting the species that turned warfare into a science. We've studied every battle you've ever fought. We know your tactics, your weapons, your weaknesses. We've had 50 years to prepare for this moment. The human fleet that had been hiding throughout the system began its attack. But they did not fight the way Council species fought. Instead of massive formation battles, they attacked in small groups that struck fast and disappeared. They targeted engines instead of weapons. They focused on disabling ships rather than destroying them. Most disturbing of all, they were broadcasting everything. Every moment of the battle was being transmitted across the galaxy. Every world in Council space could see the mighty fleet being outmaneuvered by humans who fought like pirates and raiders. Sir, the communications officer reported, we're receiving reports from across Council space. Human raids on supply convoys, attacks on communication relays. 3 Council worlds are reporting human ships in their orbital space. How is this possible? Vostek demanded. Where did they get so many ships? Governor Martinez heard the question and answered it. We built them, Admiral. While you were counting our official fleet, we were building hidden shipyards in systems you never knew we had explored. Every human colony has been contributing resources to this effort for 20 years. The battle for New Bzantium lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Council fleet was scattered. 40 ships had been destroyed. Over 100 more were disabled or damaged. The rest were fleeing in disorder. But the humans had lost only 12 vessels. As the surviving council ships limped away, Governor Martinez made one final broadcast. This one went to every world in the galaxy. People of the galaxy, today you have seen the true face of the Galactic Council. They came to destroy a peaceful colony because we dared to live free. They failed. The age of council tyranny is ending. The age of freedom is beginning. Admiral Vosatek sat in his damaged command chair as his fleet retreated. Around him, his officers worked frantically to restore damaged systems, but he knew the real damage had already been done. The Council's reputation for invincibility was broken. Across the galaxy, subject species would be watching the broadcasts of this battle. They would see that the mighty Council could be beaten, and they would start to wonder if they needed the Council at all. In the depths of space, the human fleet regrouped around New Bzantium. They had won the first battle. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. The real war was about to start. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in their 10,000-year history. Speaker Zeth Kalar stood before an assembly consumed by panic and rage. The great chamber, once a symbol of absolute power, now felt like a tomb. "Report," Zeth Kalar commanded, his crystal form flickering with barely controlled fury. Admiral Kesatra spread her golden wings in a gesture of defeat. The New Bzantium operation was a complete disaster. We lost 40 ships and over 100 more are damaged beyond repair. Admiral Vosatek's fleet is scattered across 3 systems. "How?" demanded Councillor Grex, his massive slug body pulsing with anger. "How did a primitive species defeat our finest fleet?" "They were ready for us," Kesatra replied. "They knew we were coming. They knew our tactics. They had prepared for this battle for years, maybe decades." Prime Vex, the energy, being, flickered with red light. The humans broadcast the entire battle across the galaxy. Our defeat is now known to every species in Council space. Zeth Kalar felt something he had never experienced before: fear. What has been the reaction? The answer came from Minister Thane, the Council's intelligence chief. He was a pale, thin creature from a world of eternal winter. His species had served the Council faithfully for 3,000 years, but now even he looked worried. 6 systems have declared independence in the last 72 hours, Thane reported. The Altair Confederation has expelled our administrators. The Mining Guild has stopped paying tribute. And we're receiving reports of uprisings on 17 worlds. Uprisings? Zeth Kalar's voice cracked like breaking ice. Nothing major yet, Thane continued. But the pattern is clear. Species that have been under Council rule for centuries are starting to question our authority. The humans have shown them that we can be beaten. But the worst news was yet to come. "There's more," Thane said quietly. "We've lost contact with 12 Council fleets. They were spread across the galaxy on routine patrol missions. Now they're simply gone." "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "I mean they've disappeared, Speaker. No distress signals, no wreckage, no survivors. One day they were there, the next day they weren't." Admiral Kesatra ruffled her feathers nervously. "My scouts are reporting human ships in systems that should be impossible for them to reach. Small groups, usually no more than 5 vessels. They strike supply convoys and communication relays, then vanish before reinforcements can arrive." Councillor Grex slammed his bulk against the floor. "This is impossible. Humans don't have the ships or the knowledge to conduct operations across our entire territory." "Don't they?" Zeth Kalar asked quietly. "We assumed they only had 50 ships because that's what our intelligence told us. We were wrong. We assumed they didn't know our space because we never saw them there. We were wrong about that too." Thus, Speaker accessed the chamber's main display. It showed a map of the galaxy with Council territory marked in blue. Red dots marked the locations where human ships had been spotted in the last week. There were hundreds of them. "Look at this pattern," Zeth Kalar said. "These aren't random raids. They're targeting our infrastructure systematically. Communication relays to isolate our fleets, supply depots to starve our bases, administrative centers to disrupt our government." Prime Vex pulsed with anxious energy. "How could they know so much about our operations?" Minister Thane answered that question. "We've been analyzing intercepted human communications. It appears they've been mapping our territory for decades. Every time one of their exploration ships entered our space, they were gathering intelligence. And we let them? Kessetra squawked in outrage. We thought they were harmless, Thane replied. Single ships on scientific missions. We monitored them, but didn't see them as threats. We never realized they were building a comprehensive map of our entire civilization. The truth was becoming clear, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. The humans hadn't just prepared for war with the Council. They had prepared to win it. There's something else, Thane continued. We've intercepted communications between human forces and several non-council species. The Zheng warrior clans have pledged their fleets to humanity. The Kepler Mining Consortium is providing logistical support. Even some of our own former subjects are joining them. Traitors, Grex hissed. Or survivors, Zethkalar said quietly. They're choosing the side they think will win. The speaker moved to the center of the chamber. Around him, the most powerful beings in the galaxy waited for his decision. For 10,000 years, the Council had maintained order through superior force. When rebellions arose, they crushed them. When species challenged their authority, they destroyed them. But this was different. The humans weren't just rebelling against Council rule. They were offering an alternative to it. What are our options? Zethkalar asked. Admiral Kessetra was the first to speak. We mobilize the entire Council fleet. Every ship from every member species. We hunt down these human raiders and destroy them one by one. With what intelligence? Thane asked. We don't know where their bases are. We don't know how many ships they really have. Every time we think we found them, they vanish. Then we go to the source, Counselor Grex suggested. We attack Earth itself, cut off the head, and the body dies. Prime Vex flickered uncertainly. Earth is heavily defended, and if we attack their homeworld, we prove their propaganda correct. We become the aggressive tyrants they claim we are. We are tyrants, Zethkalar said simply. We always have been. The difference is that for 10,000 years, no one was strong enough to challenge us. The chamber fell silent. It was the first time any council member had admitted what everyone knew. Their rule was based on fear, not justice. Their peace was the peace of the conquered, not the willing. So what do we do? Kessetra asked. Before Zethkalar could answer, the chamber's emergency alarms began sounding. Minister Thane quickly accessed. The incoming reports. Speaker, he said in a voice filled with disbelief, I'm receiving reports from the Outer Rim, the human fleet. It's not hiding anymore. What do you mean? I mean they're moving openly, entire battle groups jumping from system to system. They're not conducting raids anymore. They're conducting a campaign. The main display changed to show the Outer Rim territories. These were the Council's newest conquests, species that had been forced into submission only centuries ago. Now those same systems were lighting up with reports of human fleets. How many ships? Zethkalar asked. Thane was quiet for a moment as he processed the incoming data. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Over 1,000, Speaker. Maybe more. And they're not alone. I'm reading Zheng warships, Kepler mining vessels converted for combat, and ships from at least 6 other species. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't just been preparing for war. They had been building an alliance, and that alliance was now moving against the Council's weakest territories. Where are they heading? Kessetra demanded. Thane traced the fleet movements on the display. The answer became clear as the red arrows converged on a single point. The core worlds, he said. They're coming here. Zethkalar felt his crystal form grow cold. The core worlds were the heart of Council territory, the most heavily defended systems in the galaxy. If the humans were willing to attack them directly, it meant only one thing. They weren't trying to force a negotiation. They weren't trying to win concessions or territory. They were trying to end the war by destroying the Council completely. How long do we have? The speaker asked. Thane checked the fleet movements again. At their current speed, they'll reach the outer defense perimeter in 6 days. 6 days to prepare for the battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. 6 days to rally their scattered fleets and muster their defenses. 6 days to prove that 10,000 years of rule could not be ended by one upstart species and their ragtag alliance. But as Zethkalar looked around the chamber at his fellow council members, he saw something in their alien faces that had never been there before. doubt. For the first time in their history, the Galactic Council was not certain of victory. And if they were not certain, how could they expect their subjects to be? The war was far from over, but the end was beginning to come into view. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Defiance as it dropped out of hyperspace. Around her, the largest fleet in human history materialized in the space around the Council's ring station. 1,000 human ships, supported by vessels from 27 allied species. The sight should have filled her with pride. Instead, she felt only grim satisfaction. 6 months had passed since the new Bzantium incident. 6 months of running battles across the galaxy. The Council had fought hard, but they had made a critical mistake. They had treated this like a traditional war between governments. Humanity had treated it like an extermination campaign. "Admiral," reported Captain Torres from the communications station, "we're receiving surrender requests from 47 Council vessels. The rest appear to be powering down weapons." Chen nodded. The ring station's defenses had been impressive. Thousands of automated weapons platforms, energy shields that could stop a planet killer, mines and missile batteries hidden throughout the system. All of it was now wreckage floating in space. The final battle had lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Council's grand fleet was destroyed. Their mighty fortress was a broken shell, and the governments that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years were prisoners on their own station. "Any word from the other fleets?" Chen asked. "Yes, ma'am. Admiral Park reports the core worlds have surrendered. Admiral Reyes says the outer rim campaigns are complete. Admiral Zhang's forces have secured all major hyperspace routes." Chen allowed herself a small smile. The war was over. Not just this battle, but the entire conflict. The Galactic Council's military forces had been crushed. Their government had collapsed. Their empire was finished, but that raised a new question. What came next? "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the ring station," Torres reported. "It's Speaker Zethkalar. He's requesting permission to speak with you." "Put him through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the crystal being that had started this war with his arrogant ultimatum. But the creature that appeared now was different. His crystal form was cracked and dim. His voice, when he spoke, was filled with defeat. "Admiral Chen, I congratulate you on your victory. The Galactic Council formally surrenders all military forces and requests terms for peace." Chen studied the alien for a moment. 6 months ago, this being had threatened to destroy human civilization if they didn't submit to his authority. Now he was begging for mercy. "Speaker Zethkalar," she said finally, "there seems to be some confusion. This isn't a negotiation between equals. This is a conquered government surrendering to its conquerors." The crystal being flickered with what might have been surprise. "Admiral, surely you don't intend to rule the galaxy as we did. Humans have always claimed to value freedom and justice." "We do value those things," Chen replied. "That's exactly why the Galactic Council had to be destroyed." Behind her, the bridge crew continued their work. Status reports flowed in from across the galaxy. Human forces had secured every major Council installation. Allied species were taking control of their former oppressors' territory. The transition was happening with remarkable efficiency, because they had planned for this moment. "I don't understand," Zethkalar said. "If you don't intend to rule, then what do you want?" Chen moved, closer to the screen. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of humanity's collective anger. "Speaker, let me explain something about humans. When someone threatens to wipe out our entire species, we don't just defend ourselves. We make sure that threat can never arise again." She gestured to the tactical display that showed human and allied fleets throughout the galaxy. "This war didn't start when you attacked New Bzantium. It started the moment you sent that ultimatum to Earth. You told us to submit or die. We chose a third option." "Which was?" "To make sure no one could ever threaten human extinction again. The only way to guarantee that was to end the system that made such threats possible." Zethkalar's form grew dimmer. "So you will establish your own empire. Replace Council tyranny with human tyranny." Chen laughed, and the sound was colder than space itself. "You still don't understand, do you? We're not interested in ruling the galaxy. We're interested in making sure no one else can rule it either." The crystal being flickered in confusion. "I don't understand." "The Galactic Council is finished," Chen explained. But we're not replacing it with a human empire. We're replacing it with something that's never existed before. A government where every species has an equal voice. She activated the ship's main display, showing the political map of the galaxy. But instead of the blue territories of Council space, the map now showed hundreds of different colors. Each one represented a free world or alliance. The new Galactic Senate will be based on representation, not domination. Every species gets to choose their own government. Every world gets protection from aggression. And every threat of genocide gets the same response you just experienced. But how will you maintain order? Zethkalar asked. Without central authority, there will be chaos. Wars between species, economic collapse. The galaxy will tear itself apart. Chen shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe species that are free to choose their own path will find better ways to settle their differences. Either way, it won't be our problem to solve. Not your problem. The crystal being's voice rose in pitch. You've destroyed the government of the entire galaxy. How can you say it's not your problem? Because we're not staying. The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Zethkalar's form flickered rapidly as he processed what he had just heard. Not staying? But you've won. The galaxy is yours. No, Chen said firmly. The galaxy belongs to everyone who lives in it. Humans will take our place in the new Senate alongside every other species. We'll have one vote out of thousands. Nothing more. She moved closer to the screen again. When she spoke, her voice carried a promise that was both reassuring and terrifying. But understand this clearly, Speaker. If anyone tries to rebuild what you created, if any species or alliance attempts to conquer or dominate the others, they'll discover that humanity is very good at breaking things, and we have long memories. Zethkalar was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. But how do we know you won't become tyrants yourselves? How do we know humans won't abuse this power? Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. Because we're not interested in power over others. We're interested in making sure others can't have power over us. There's a difference, and that difference is why you lost. She turned to Captain Torres. Prepare a shuttle for the Speaker and his staff. They'll be transported to the War Crimes Tribunal on Kepler Prime. The new government will decide their fate. Wait, Zethkalar called out. What about the Council species? What happens to us? That depends, Chen replied. Species that cooperated with human forces during the war will be treated as allies. Those that fought to the end will be occupied until new governments can be established. And those that committed atrocities, she shrugged. Well, that's what the tribunals are for. The transmission ended, leaving Chen alone with her thoughts. Through the bridge windows, she could see the ruins of the ring station. 10,000. Years of tyranny reduced to twisted metal and debris. Admiral, Captain Torres said quietly, the Senate representatives are requesting permission to board. They're ready to begin establishing the new government. Chen nodded. Representatives from over 50 species were waiting to start the work of building something that had never existed before. A truly democratic galactic government. It would be messy. There would be arguments, conflicts, maybe even small wars. Some species would try to dominate others. Some would refuse to cooperate at all, but it would be their choice to make. Grant permission, she ordered, and prepare the fleet for departure. Our work here is done. Where to, Admiral? Chen looked out at the stars that had once been claimed by an empire that thought it would last forever. Now they belonged to no one and everyone. Home, Captain. We've got colonies to build and families to raise. Let the galaxy govern itself. As the Defiance turned toward human space, Chen reflected on the war they had just won. Humanity had faced extinction and responded by reshaping the entire galaxy. They had been given an ultimatum and replied with revolution. But most importantly, they had won the war and chosen not to replace one tyranny with another. That, more than any victory in battle, proved that humans deserved their place among the stars. The galaxy was free, and humanity was going home.